We gather in reverence before the wonder of life and the journey of our souls. We gather in the wonder of this moment, the wonder and the frustration of gathering together but at a distance. Each of us set apart before our own viewing screens, each listening, each trying to connect. We gather in reverence before an intangible reality that touches our lives, a reality that eyes see not nor ears can detect, a reality that hands can never touch, that space cannot hold, and time cannot measure. And yet it is the source of what is good and is holy and is decent in this life. As we gather before the realities and the intangibles of this life, let us be open to the stirrings and the promptings of what is holy and what is joyful this day. Good morning to you all, and welcome to our service here on October 11th at First Parish Church in Weston. I am Jeff Barz-Snell, minister here at First Parish. We are glad you could take the time to join us. Join us this morning in our sanctuary that is now our ad hoc broadcast studio of sorts. If you are a new viewer, we are delighted that you could take the time to join us and tune in. And if you are a longtime member, we continue to miss your physical presence with us this day. Our service participants this morning include Jeff Weeding, our organist, Bill Sano, our choir director, Christopher Humbert, our new soloist, and Christine Bishop, church member and the lighter of our chalice this morning. In addition, as part of this special service celebrating and holding up the the Vote initiative this fall, we will include video addresses by Nicole Presley, the national organizer of the Vote, and the Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association. Our service is produced and edited by Mr. Max Hall and Jonah Barz-Snell. You may be wondering what exactly the Vote is. Perhaps you've seen the ad for it on the back of the UU World magazine. the Vote is a nonpartisan voter outreach and encouragement drive created earlier this year. The program does not endorse any candidate, but rather seeks to hold up the values and principles and the history that inform our progressive-minded approach to religious faith as practiced in our congregations in different ways all over the country. Most Unitarian Universalist churches, ours included, were founded on democratic principles. We were founded on the clear belief that all people have inherent worth and dignity and should be allowed to conduct their lives with individual freedom and the use of the democratic process in our communities, in our towns, and in our country. There are currently efforts underway around the country to discourage people to vote, with prominent voices even calling into question the integrity of our voting systems in certain states and precincts. This is the case even though there is no evidence of widespread or even minimal voter fraud in the United States. So the UUA created the the Vote initiative earlier this year. You can find more information about this program and some of the actions you can take by going to www.uuthevote.org. Here in Weston, we will be hosting a virtual phone banking and letter writing event the week of October 18th. Stay tuned for more information, as they say. In the meantime, we offer this service about the importance of speaking up for love and speaking out against hate. And we will start with an ideal hymn in that spirit for such an occasion. Please join with me wherever you find yourself. Stand on up. Go ahead and stand up if you are so inclined and sing a few verses or at least hum along to Love Will Guide Us. The lyrics were included in the order of service that was emailed out to many of you yesterday and is also posted in the order of service that's on our website.
Please join me in singing hymn number 131, Love Will Guide Us. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. You can change the world with your love. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. You are like no other being. What you can give, no other can give. To the future of our precious children, to the future of the world where we live. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. You can change the world with your love.
Amen. Would you please join with me in saying together the congregational prayer that was included in the order of service, if you have it in front of you. O God, grant us your vision in our time. Help us to write it so large that even a runner can see it. Make it so compelling that even a cynic will pause, so convincing that a skeptic will risk trying to bring hope to others, and so inspiring that the committed will stand courageously in faith, leaving the results to you. This we ask in the spirit of your Son, Jesus, who taught us to pray, saying together, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. I'd now like to call forward Christine Bishop to light our chalice on this day.
In my introductory economics classes, we build our theoretical model on the premise that while individuals know best how to choose individual consumer goods, we participate in government to decide together on our shared goals and how to reach them. In theory, using government of, by, and for the people, we can accomplish things that aren't possible for individuals acting alone, or even for affinity groups or religious organizations or foundations. We can build roads and national parks, provide educational opportunity, assure public health, strive for justice, and even if we choose to, might be able to address the pernicious chasms of income and wealth inequality that have been called the defining challenge of our time. In practice, we know that democracy is messy and imperfect and maddening, but as has been said many times, much better than any known alternative. That means every citizen must be included in the process to use their voice through their vote. To work for this for all is to support the first principle of a free faith, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. I light our chalice today, mindful that my grandmother, Maud Ryder, was 30 years old before she could legally vote in a presidential election, and that my friend, Georgia Sideropoulos, voted for the first time at age 37 as a new citizen, and that there are voters in this country who are prevented or dissuaded from voting. We here, with our privilege, must do as much as we can to assure that all voices know they are heard and that everyone can vote. May it be so.
Thank you, Christine. We now invite you to participate in an ongoing but new tradition here at First Parish, the virtual exchange of peace. We use this amazing technology we have in our pockets and carry around with us all the time to accomplish all sorts of impressive and amazing and productive things, but we rarely use these devices to simply foster some goodwill. So take a moment and reach out to folks you know from First Parish or from your larger community via text, email, or a simple call, like I'm getting right now. Send them a quick text, give them a quick call, and simply say, "Good morning. I wish you well." Say you can't talk long right now because you are attending a church service, and it's okay if they think that's strange or they don't quite understand. Tell them you are participating in this service remotely and wanted to take a moment and wish them peace during a time when so many folks are struggling. Our reading for this morning comes from the Christian New Testament, from the epistle from First John, chapter 4. John, actually, in the New Testament, has three very short letters. There's First John, which is all of 4 or 5 chapters, and then there's Second and Third John, and they actually comprise the shortest letters, if you will, in the New Testament, being only 13 and 15 verses each. I want to read to you arguably the most well-known or famous passage from these John letters. It's in that 4th chapter, and it's his section where he describes the blessedness of love. Beloved, let us love one another because love is from God. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, for God is love. God's love was revealed among us in this way. God sent his only Son into the world so that we might live through him. In this love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son to be the atoning sacrifice for our sins. Beloved, since God loved us so much, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is perfected in us. God is love, and those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. Love has been perfected among us in this, that we have boldness on the day of judgment, because as he is, so we are in this world. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, For fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not reached perfection in love. We love because he first loved us. Those who say, I love God, and hate their brothers and sisters are liars. For those who do not love a brother or a sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. The commandment we have from him is this: those who love God must love their brothers and sisters also. Here ends the reading.
Going home, I'm just going home, quiet like some still day, I'm just going home. It's not far, just close by, through an open door. Work all day, care laid by, gone to fear no more. Mother's there expecting me, Father's waiting too. Lots of folk gathered there, all the friends I knew. Oh, the friends I know. Home, I'm going home. Nothing's lost, all's gain. No more fret nor pain. No more stumbling on the way. No more longing for the day. Gone to Rome no more. Going home like the way, restless dream just going home. It's not far, just close by, through an open door. I'm just going
So I don't know about you, but I am not seeing a lot of love and understanding out there in American society right now. People with strong convictions and high principles are being pushed apart rather than being encouraged to come together. Differences are being exacerbated while those things we share in common, those things we hold together, are being overlooked. Just in the last few days, a militia group in Michigan was arrested for plotting unbelievably to kidnap the governor of Michigan and attack the state house there, all because of executive orders that limit the opening of businesses and schools as a result of a major historic pandemic. This is an astonishing episode in 21st century America, and I think it speaks to the tragic divisions and the ignorance at work in American society right now. There have been other times in American history when our citizens were polarized and divided. Lest we forget, we fought a tragic civil war about the institution and sin of slavery. Each generation of Americans has had to ask themselves how best we can and we should live and work together in a free and democratic society. Lest we forget, during times of strife, at difficult moments when the bonds of brotherly and sisterly affection are strained, voices and communities of faith can make a real and abiding difference, sometimes for the worse, and I would like to think most times for the better. Abraham Lincoln appealed quite dramatically to the best and the highest principles of religious faith in his famous address at his first inauguration in 1861. He declared, "We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained it, it must not break the bonds of our affection. The mystic cords of memory stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone all over this broad land will yet swell the chorus of the Union. And when again touched, as surely they will be, become the better angels of our nature." That phrase, the better angels of our nature, has echoed down through the decades ever since. A few years later, President Lincoln, during the Civil War, was asked by a reporter if he believed that God was on his side. And instead of offering a cavalier answer, as many conservative Christians are doing so today, he replied with the words we placed at the top of our order of service this week. "My concern is not whether God is on our side," Lincoln said. "Rather, my greatest concern is to be on God's side. For God is always right." I am not sure any of us can know for sure if we are on God's side. Indeed, we are part of a larger faith tradition that casts doubt on any person, on any tradition that claims absolute authority on what is right and what is true. Humility is always called for when making absolute claims. For no one person and no one community has a monopoly on the truth. That which is transcendent can never entirely be understood or domesticated, and therefore no one of us can hold and contain all of what is true. Instead, all we can do as flawed human beings is take actions, take positions that we hope move us closer to what we hope and believe is God's side. That which is decent and fair in this life. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. That is why Jesus offered that hope, offered that plea in the prayer that he taught to his followers. And that is why the writer of First John that we heard in our reading this morning reminds us and his fervent listeners that God is love. We heard in the reading this morning, those who say, I love God, and yet hate their brothers and sisters are liars. For those who do not love a brother or a sister whom they have seen cannot possibly love God. That is why congregations like ours and many others have measured our belief, have measured our faith assertions by such values as what is true, and what is just, and what is fair, and what is equitable. Our church covenant captures this sentiment in its elegant declaration and phrasing. In the love of truth, in the spirit of Jesus Christ, we join for the worship of God and service to humankind. Truth, worship, compassion, service. Those values, those activities increase the likelihood that we might be, just might be, on the divine side. As I've noted in services over the last few months, truth matters. Trying to understand what is objectively real and treating people with respect and decency matters. Conversely, not telling the truth matters, and not behaving honorably with some respect for our democratic institutions matters. History tells us that democracy requires vigilance, decency, and at times, action. And so First Parish Church in Weston decided to join and support the larger UU the Vote program created by the UUA earlier this year, with the goal of reaching out first to 1 million, and now that that's been achieved, 2 million voters around the country. We are not endorsing any candidate. I would never formally actually do that from the pulpit. Rather, we are encouraging people to exercise their right to vote, to remember those values that are important to them, and to let their voice be heard and counted respectfully, joyfully, and peacefully. We Unitarian Universalists have a long history of standing up for decency and fairness in American society. And the UU the Vote drive this fall is very much in keeping with that legacy and with that practice. And we're going to hear now a little bit more about this from a very personal and institutional perspective right now. I am pleased to welcome virtually my colleague in the ministry and the president, the distinguished president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, the Reverend Susan Frederick Gray.
I was 13 years old when I became a Unitarian Universalist. I was raised in this faith, but I was 13 when I claimed it as my own. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was waiting for my parents to finish their committee meetings after service. All the other kids had left, and I was bored. I wandered into the visitor's corner, and a little red wallet card caught my eye. It said in bold letters on the front, "What do Unitarian Universalists believe?" My 13-year-old self wondered, what do Unitarian Universalists believe? As I read the 10 statements written by the Reverend David O. Rankin, in my heart, in my soul, as I read those words, I said, yes, this is what I believe. One phrase in particular planted itself in me like the deepest truth, and I never forgot it. We believe in the motive force of love. It was in that moment when I knew that this was my religion. I start with this story to ground the work of UU the Vote in our theology, which is its foundation and its inspiration. This year marks the 250th anniversary of what we celebrate as the beginning of universalism in the United States. It was on September 30th, 1770, that Universalist John Murray preached his first sermon on this continent. And the truth that I read in that little red wallet card, the truth I've never forgotten, is the message of universalism. 250 years ago, in the context of religious notions of God rooted in punishment, damnation, and the division of humanity between worthy and unworthy, saved and damned, the idea of universal salvation, that God's love is unconditional, that no one is cast out, and that salvation is not individual but collective, was radical and liberating. Universalism proclaimed that humanity was bound together in a common destiny, and that love is the thread that binds each of us to the other and everyone to creation. Universalists believed that God is love. They also believed in hell. They just believed that it existed here and now on the earth. The great Universalist preacher Hosea Ballou was clear about how politicians and those in power used fear, stoked fear, to protect their greed and corruption and self-interest, and he knew the suffering that resulted from that. Rather than speak of theology in terms of speculative notions of God, Ballou spoke of it in terms of human experience here and now and our relationships to each other. A society that lives out the motive force of love would be one that fosters joy and liberation and thriving for all people. This is the highest calling of our faith as Unitarian Universalists, to live out, defend, and embrace this motive force of love in our lives, in our actions, in our commitments, and in our society. This is why UU the Vote says, vote love. Today, in our context, we are witnessing the emboldening and authorization of ideologies rooted not in love and interdependence, but in domination, authoritarianism, and dehumanization. And just to be clear, this is not new. It has a long and deadly history on this continent, going back more than 400 years. And yes, even our Universalist ancestors came from that same lineage of Christian European conquest and limited the vision of universalism only to white society, a limit that we are still trying to redeem ourselves from. It is dehumanization that creates systems that put children in cages, that deny health care to our transgender siblings, that allow police violence and the murder of Black people to continue unabated and without accountability. Dehumanization that allows triage protocols that devalue the lives of disabled people and that lead to systemic divestment from communities, the resources from housing to education, healthcare to jobs, and the criminalization of poverty. Just as Hosea Ballou named it, the tool of dehumanization, its propaganda, is fear. Propaganda that tells us to fear our neighbor, that we are not family and kin, but enemies. This is the exact opposite of our theology of universalism that tells us that we have a common destiny and we are connected to one another in love. This is why You the Vote says vote, love, defeat, hate. And while the forces of dehumanization and domination have always been a part of U.S. history, so too have been those who have resisted and organized for the values of dignity, equity, humanity, and love. These days are heartbreaking, they're infuriating, and they're frightening. On days when I lose my own strength, I turn to the words of Alice Walker, who reminds us, we remember our ancestors because it is an easy thing to forget, that we are not the first to suffer, rebel, fight, love, and die. The grace with which we embrace life in spite of the pain and the sorrow is always a measure of what has gone before us. We remember our ancestors, theological, familial, and in movement. We remember Francis, Ellen Watkins Harper, Hosea Ballou, John Brown, Sitting Bull, Ida B. Wells, Dr. King, Anne Braden, and so many more whose names history does not remember. Those who struggled and risked and fought and loved for the principles of justice, equity, liberty. This is why in You the Vote, we say vote love, we say defeat hate, because, dear ones, we are on a precipice. Every single one of our most deeply held values is on the line right now. The current powers in government are showing in everything they do that the inherent worth and dignity of so many immigrants, Black people, disabled folks, trans and queer people does not matter to them. Human agency, interdependence, the democratic process are being disrupted and defiled daily. It is a radical act of faith to not only continue to believe in all of our cherished principles, but to demand them by speaking out, taking risks, organizing, leveraging our resources, and building networks of solidarity and power to protect one another and these values. We are on a precipice, and our actions right now will affect whether we have a chance to continue to bring our bold values forward, to rebuild, expand, and strengthen our democracy, to confront police violence, to upend racial inequity, to change divestment from communities, and make moves to protect the climate. Now is the time to draw on the grace, the courage, and the strength of all those who went before, to widen our comfort zones, and to do all we can to vote, love, and defeat hate. If you haven't taken any form of action yet, sign up for a shift with You the Vote. I can tell you that it's fun. And if you've written postcards to voters, but you feel nervous about phone banking, do it with your fellow UUs. And if you've been all in with You the Vote from the beginning, keep it up and start planning for how you will show up and organize after November 3rd. Because democracy will not be restored in one election. It's been under systemic attack for decades, and justice will not roll down like waters in one election. Voting matters. It's absolutely critical, but it is not the end. It is just one piece of the long haul work of organizing for a future where all are free and where all can thrive. Will you show up in the streets, set up to contribute to a bail or legal assistance fund, open your church building to protesters needing refuge from state repression, tap into your own endowment or discretionary funds to make sure that grassroots organizers have the funds they need for their work? There is so much to do. And our faith calls us to love more radically, to give more generously, to believe more fervently that another world is possible, and be willing to be all in for that future. As you've heard me say many times before, this is no time for a casual faith, no time for a casual commitment to what you hold most dear. And this is no time to go it alone. Friends, we are in this work together. I invite you to be deeper in this work of You, the Vote with us. May we remember that we are held by love always. May we remember that we are held by and with one another. And may we all together be all in today, tomorrow, next month, and next year for justice, for love, for democracy, and for a future that is free and thriving for all people. May it be so.
We'd like to thank Susan Frederick Gray for her inspirational and personal perspective. She covered a lot of ground, and she mentioned several outstanding Americans in her address who have advocated for a better world in the past. If you did not recognize some of the names she mentioned, we have included a list of them with links to their biographies in the e-Parish Post that was sent out last night. And now I would like to introduce Nicole Presley, who is the national organizer for the You, the Vote initiative.
Hi, I'm Nicole Presley, national organizer of You, the Vote, and I'm so honored to be a part of You, the Vote, and a part of this special worship service. By this time, you've probably gotten used to virtual worship. You've made sure your computer is charged, you've searched your email for Zoom links, or you've scrolled through your social media feed for the live stream. But from whatever platform you're entering worship today, you are in sacred space. Getting here was not easy. Remember the spring? Remember, many of us had to learn new skills and to stretch ourselves and maybe our internet speed to continue to gather with our beloved faith community. We learned Zoom, we downloaded apps, and we reached out for help to be with one another. Transformation is always a stretch, and we need to bring that same energy to this year's election. In the past few months, I have witnessed amazing things from all of you. We created a goal to reach out to 1 million voters, and we are almost there. We stretched ourselves. We stretched ourselves to get on another Zoom call, to learn to text voters, phone bank, and send postcards. We learned how to be vulnerable and have critical conversations with members of our communities. We are not just a faith community that believes another world is possible, but we are a community that is willing to act to make that world a reality. We have a legacy of showing up, and we know that our victories are never guaranteed, and we know that those victories are never won by those in power ceding it willingly. The people imagined it, the people demanded it, and we, the people, gathered to make it so. In all of our movements, the stakes were high. But instead of mobilizing out of the fear of defeat, we have organized out of a sacred calling to build a world that we know is possible. That is why nonpartisan work is not just important, but is absolutely revolutionary. We come together to learn, to create, and to put into practice ways of being towards our collective liberation. That is our victory. And as the chant goes, I believe that we will win. I believe that together, through sacred and sustained work, now and beyond November, we can call forth a world that moves towards our collective liberation. But we must all show up to vote love in 2020. That means showing up to the work that is needed, not just the work that is comfortable. That means showing up in service and in solidarity to combat a sinful campaign of voter suppression and intimidation. That means recognizing that white supremacy and capitalism are the technologies through which political agency and democracy are stripped from marginalized communities. So when I say vote love, I don't just mean voting our values, although I absolutely want you to do that if you are able. I don't just mean showing up to voter contact work, even though I absolutely want everyone to join into this work. I mean centering the oppressed, working to free them all, to defend Black lives, to fight for climate justice and healthcare for all, for reproductive justice, and for safe and thriving schools and communities. I mean continuing whatever work is necessary to make sure every ballot is counted and that the results and will of the people are respected. We have important choices to make in 2020, but if we are to really vote love and defeat hate in 2020, we must also commit to continue to side with love every single day after November 3rd and into 2021. If you are in it for the long haul, if you believe that another world is possible because you are gathered in a community that puts faith into action, if you are ready to stretch beyond November 3rd to protect democracy, join us. Take the Vote Love Pledge to join a team that is organizing to take action in this election and ready to mobilize after November 3rd for the work ahead. Join me. Take your phone out, text Pledge Love to 51555 to take the pledge today, or go online at uuthevote.org. We need everyone in this work. Thank you for finding your role in this work. Thank you for doing it with joy and hopefulness. And thank you for joining UU the Vote. Let's make sure love always wins.
Thank you, Nicole. Just a reminder, you can find more information about UU the Vote at the website of the same name, www.uuthevote.org. You can also text Vote Love to 51555 and get plugged in via your cell phone if you are inclined to do that. Most importantly, be on the lookout for a few UU the Vote virtual meetings and opportunities the week of October 19th in and around First Parish Church here in Weston. Many of you have inquired about how you can support First Parish Church and our work here in Weston when we are not together here in body on Sundays. As I note in our services, you can do so three ways. You can mail in a check to the church, which works quite well. You can log into your bank account and set up a one-time or a regular donation to First Parish Church in Weston. That's my preferred approach. Or you can use our PayPal account. And the easiest way to do that is to have a PayPal account yourself and then search on our office email address, admin@firstparishweston.org. Regardless of which option you choose, we are grateful to you, the members and the friends of this congregation who continue to support our church's voice and presence and mission. What we do here is making a difference during these strange and challenging times, and it's worthy of our support.
Salvation
Thank you for joining us today. We invite you to check out our upcoming gatherings and programs, including our virtual fellowship hour that will begin today at 11:30 a.m. on Zoom. There are links to all of our online meetings in the e-newsletter that is sent out on Fridays and on the calendar page of our website. Next week, we hope to be back potentially outside on October 18th, weather and deity permitting. Otherwise, you will find us here at 10:30 a.m. with a virtual fellowship hour to follow. In addition, there will be meetings of the Social Justice Task Force and our Denominational Affairs Committee on Zoom at 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. respectively next Sunday. Finally, I encourage all of you to be on the lookout for our last outdoor event that we hope to have. If the weather is nice, we plan to have a special outdoor Halloween event on Sunday, October 25th, complete with what we're calling a trunk or treat event for kids. Again, weather and pandemic permitting. Stay tuned for additional details. We continue to discover many ways that we can be supportive as a community from a distance. I am gratified and thankful to see so many of you stepping up and reaching out during this challenging and unusual time. That's what churches like this one do. Thank you for being here today. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord keep all those whom you love, whether here or in some other place. May God be your companion, and you be God's friend as you walk together through all the days of your life. And at the journey's end, may you find the welcome of God's love. It keeps us all. Amen.